Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello, I'm Sandra Sari from 4G class of English Education Department 2018. On this occasion, I would like to tell you how to read a journal and its component. But before we go there, let's first talk about the relation between college students and journals. Okay, so college and school are a bit different. When we were on school, we used to use textbooks as a source for study. But after we fall into college life, we don't use textbook anymore. We use journal as a source. So journal is the most often thing that sticks in college students. Thus, having navigating skill for college students is a must in order to find the right journal as required. Moreover, reading journal is a mandatory thing to do for college students. Hence, most of the tasks which are given by the lecturer need qualified references. We need sources that support our knowledge, that is journal. However, understanding a journal that has been published nationally or internationally is not an easy thing if you're not do it as often as possible, because reading becomes easier with experience. Reading is indeed an activity that has many benefits. There are no exception for reading a journal. The major benefit of reading a journal are can increase our knowledge, our insight, and also can make us have a wide perspective and mindset. Besides that, read a journal can enrich our vocabulary. The more we read, the more we find a lot of unknown words. Moreover, every journal definitely cannot be separated from previous research or previous journal which are used by author or researcher for reference. Okay, this is actually my favorite part. This is a bibliography part. We will find sequence of references books which have been used by author in compiling their writings. Hence, by reading journal, we can easily know many interesting books from this part. In addition, when we read a journal, we will definitely read from the beginning until the end. By accustoming to read a journal, it indirectly makes us know and understand the component of a journal. So, what are the components in a journal? The first component in a journal is title. Every journal definitely must have a clear title. By noticing its title will probably ease us as a reader to get to know the intent of the journal itself, without need to read the entire content of journal. In other words, title in every journal can give us a clear information about the topic of the journal. The second component in a journal is author and institution. This part of journal tells us who the author of the journal is, where the institution he or she works for, and usually equip his or her context for further discussion through email. The third component in a journal is abstract. This part of journal provides a summary of the entire contents of the journal. This includes the reason why the research was conducted, the research method, the analysis of the research, and a little excerpt from the conclusion. This is part that have to read the first time before deciding whether this journal is valuable enough to read or not, or in other words, whether this journal can be used for our reference or not. If in this part we do not find any useful information for our studies and research, then move on and skip this journal. The fourth component in a journal is introduction. This part of journal provides the detailed supporting information on the topic to be discussed, usually containing references to the latest research that underlies the research conducted. It also provides reasons for the importance of why the research was conducted. The next component in a journal is literature review. We can easily identify this part because it usually contains citation. The literature review provides information about the past studies and that have been done on the topic of a journal. This is actually the part that can increase our knowledge. When we read this part, try to determine the most important past findings and the reason those past studies led the author to do this particular study. The next component in a journal is method. This part generally describes the tools and the materials which are used by the author, how the research method and how to get the data collection. Usually there are pictures, mathematical equations, tables and diagrams that relate to the process of obtaining data. This part is important to be read if we need a detailed information how researchers get the data of the research. The delivery must be clear and detailed in order to easy to be understood. The next component in a journal is result and discussion. This part of journal usually provides a review of the data that have been obtained and the analysis of the data in graphical form. The graph in this part is usually very important because it determines how big the impact of the research journal. This part is also important part to be read, so make sure we can check the existing graphic and know how to understand it. The next component in a journal is conclusion. This is the final part of a journal that contains conclusions obtained from the research process and discussion conducted by the author. This is a part that illustrates how interesting and important research has been done. The last component in a journal is reference. Reference is a bibliography or a sequence of books which have been used and read by the author related to the content of the journal. Some of international journals have some additional sections such as supplementary information, acknowledgement, and others. But generally, the entire structure of journal will not have a significant difference. Okay, after knowing the components of a journal, now it's time to know how to read and understand a journal. In reading a journal, oftentimes we find things that we don't understand, and I think that's a reasonable thing, especially for a person who is reading a journal for the first time. When I read a journal, the first thing I do after I found the journal is the same thing I do when I read a novel. The difference only in a novel I read the synopsis part, but in journal I read the abstract part. So the first thing to do to read journal is we can read the abstract part of the journal in order to get better thought and understanding of the journal. Then we can move on to the introduction part. We can read this part at a glance. Also, start from here, we can try to write important things or we can highlight it. Because this part contains some important things such as background of the research, how important the research was carried out, and suggestion which can be done for further research. Hereinafter, read the result part from the journal. This is part of journal spells out about the result from the research. We can utilize this part by summarizing the result from the journal through the existing tables or graphs. And I think that must be an important thing to do because table and graph shows us how significant the research is. further, read the conclusion part carefully. This part shows us the answers of why the research was conducted and also the expectation from the researcher for further research. For the finishing, we read the note that have been written and then we can compare it with the abstract part in order to get better understanding, and also it will shows how far we understand the journal. In addition, we can check to the reference part. By looking at it, we can find numerous sources that have been used by researchers for the journal. It also will help us to add more resources if we need it. We can read the journal over and over again to make sure we found what we want and what we need in that journal. Okay, I think that's all from me. Hope you enjoy this video, and as a massive thank you for your kind attention. I'm sorry for my mistakes. Stay safe, stay healthy, and stay at home. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.